Hey, everybody, this is your boy John, aka Captain Listache, and today's episode is going to be an evolved episode. It's going to be called Mutate, Don't Malfunction. So, again, we're going to be talking about some trauma, very serious stuff, so just stay tuned.
Evolve, adapt, overcome. Power up your mind and level up your soul. It just takes one small step to be better.
Hey, everybody, this is your boy John again, aka Captain Listache, and always with me is Matty Boy, aka Mr. Grumpy Beard.
What's up, everybody?
Everybody. Yeah, so it's funny how we always start the Evolve episodes because, you know, we're trying to talk about serious shit, and then we're like, Evolve, be better! You know, and it's just like this hyping music, and you're like, okay, well,
that song's a real banger, too. Yeah.
No, it is, and we're just like, yeah, and then we're like, oh, shit, now we got to talk about real shit. Hold on. But anyways, yeah, so
It's meant to be motivating, John. It's like, yeah.
I know it's meant to be, and I am motivated. To talk about it. It's just, sometimes, you know, we talk about some real shit, and just sometimes it gets hurts our feelings a little bit. You know, little twisty little here, and then, you know, Matt's like, I don't have feelings. He's like, I don't have
that
another.
long ago.
They're like, I'm a man. I'm like, all right, well, didn't we just talk about men's mental health,
I'm a
motherfucker?
man, I don't
Goddamn
have
it?
feelings.
Yeah, fucking goddamn it.
All my
Fuck you,
feelings are
anyways.
grumpy.
Oh, grumpy, exactly. Mr. Grumpy Beard, hence the reason. Anyways, you know, we always go through life, and we always have these things that are unexpected, right? And we never know how to deal with them, right? So, you know, really the main theme here is, you know, life will change you, but it doesn't have to twist you. So, I mean, that's a good saying
Yeah.
here, you know, because you know, it does change you, but it's having that sort of, you know, resiliency, you know, and having that adaptability to do what is necessary to overcome those things. And so, you know, it doesn't have to keep, you know, pulling at you and making you feel a certain way every day. I mean, it doesn't have to change you completely, but, you know, at least recognize that pain and at least, you know, understand what it is. And then, you know, hopefully use that towards a passion, towards something like this, like a podcast or music or whatever it is that you want to do, right? Because that's the real nitty gritty shit. I mean, Matt is a prime example. Look at him. He runs this podcast with me. I mean, he does a lot of the legwork here when it comes to like the editing and stuff. But it's crazy, like, you know, with his, you know, his music, you know, things that he's doing with the AI stuff and like all this other crap. And I'm like, dude. And he's like, well, you could do it too. And I'm like, you're right, I could do it, but then I'd be stealing your niche, you know, your thing that you like to do, you know. And this is why I had Matt help me out with this little GBT thing, because I'm trying to figure out my own thing. But yes, I want to find a way to channel that pain or that not saying trauma, but you know, I've had some issues in my past, and you know, especially being deployed overseas and stuff, and there's still things that make it harder, and I've had days where it's harder to do that, but you know, finding a way to release that anger and that pain and to really focus on, you know, being a better person in the long run, at least for my wife and my son, and, you know, for my family and stuff, like that's, you know, for me, a main motivator. And especially you, my friend. I mean, you're one of my best friends, man. Now, hold on. I'm going to say this now because Jordan, if you're listening, yes, you're my brother from another mother. I said, don't ever forget that. I said, but Matt is also part of our little group here. Okay. So remember that. Okay. I trust him too. So I want you to trust his ass. So I'm only going to say that now. But anyways,
so,
I know.
So this Evolve episode kind of does tie into one that we did recently where we were talking about, you know, superheroes and origin stories. The one we did right before this one. So yeah, it's, you know, this one's more about, you know, mutating, don't malfunction, how life will change you, but it doesn't have to twist you. Like, you don't have to be a villain, right? Like, if you think of your life like a comic book, there's that before version of you, and then there's a moment where, you know, everything changed for you.
Right. I mean, so prime example, you know, you look at Spider-Man, right? So, you know, the fact that like you're, you know, radioactive spider bite, you know, so in this case, you know, it could be like the trauma, you know, the loss or heartbreak, betrayal, addiction, failure, or even abandonment, like stuff like that. You know, it's that your alleyway mugging, you know, the piece of you that is, you know, you're reminded of the past or you're reminded of this trauma every day. So like I know, we talked about men's mental health, with a good friend of ours, John Nopkick over here, and unfortunately, man, I'm hoping that we can get you on the show at some point too. But like, we're talking about, some of the stuff on there, for guys especially, but I'm, talking with my dad too when we brought him on, again, he suffers from, PTSD, and, it's tough, when you're reliving the same pain, the same trauma, the same things every day. And, you're constantly reminded of that same stuff, but it doesn't have to, you know, necessarily define you, in that sense, but you use it as a way of, you know, turning it into something good. So like for another example, right? So you look at um, like Bruce Wayne, right? So losing his parents, it becomes the Batman to, protect the innocent. But the catch is like the event alone doesn't make the hero the villain. It's how they turn that moment into what they want to become. And so like in this case, let's say, Harvey Dent, right? Also faced loss and betrayal, and he becomes Two-Face. And then Mr. Freeze tried to save his wife, but lets grief consume him. And it's that constant, like, he's not, yes, he's a villain and he loses kind of like his sense of purpose and like down the road, but like he does realize that like his main reason for at least Mr. Freeze, he's trying to find a cure for his wife.
Right, but
That
I
was the
think
main
the
reason.
thing that this is making is like the event alone, like the loss of his parents didn't make Batman,
Well,
and
no.
the loss that Harvey Dent faced and the betrayal didn't make him become Two Face, or the Mister Freeze, saving his wife didn't make him Mister Freeze. It was Batman wanting to protect the innocent. It was Harvey Dent becoming Two Face. It was, so it didn't, the event alone, like the origin story alone didn't make them become who they were. It was the mutation. It was that twisting, right?
Right. It was the grabbing and the pulling and moving it
Right.
around that created
That's
that.
where that, real people are the same as these three. We get hit by life, and then some of us, yes, we become protectors, and then others become, unfortunately, they become destroyers. And that's exactly with Harvey Dent and Mr. Freeze. Like, they let their loss and betrayal and their grief become, unfortunately, who they were, instead of turning it around and not letting it consume them.
Right. So really it's, your trauma doesn't make you special. It's what you do with it that does. And so, like what Matt's saying too is, looking at the fact that, we're hit by, let's say you lose your house, or, you lose your job, or, you're, let's say your father dies, or whoever, right? Just throwing examples out. That doesn't necessarily have to continue to be like, if you're, if let's say you're a good person, you've been through all your life and you've been a good person, and all of a sudden, like you lose your wife, and then all of a sudden you become, an asshole, and you start like, becoming a drunk, and you start robbing people, and you start doing that. Like, yes, unfortunately, sometimes that we, as people, we go down these holes and these things that are not necessarily the path that we were supposed to be on. And so now it's like, how do you go back, or how do you find a way to try to come back to where you
Right.
were? That's the piece where, sometimes it's hard, it's not always that simple, drawn out path that we're always, told to at least believe, and sometimes people have to go through the hard way of life to then hopefully come back and say, hey, you know what? I'm here now. I've learned my mistakes. I've learned from this. And now here's what I'm going to do to prove that I'm
Yeah.
actually
And
worthy of
this is
I'm
what
doing.
we're gonna navigate. This is kind of what we're gonna get through this. I mean, I know we're kind of just introducing the kind of origin story piece of it, but this is what we're gonna navigate. Whether it's with the mutation versus the malfunction, you know, yeah. I have this trauma. I have this heartbreak or the addiction. That's where I mutated. Life changed me. Whatever, it twisted me. But how do I not malfunction? How do I not go down that road? Where we'll get there, but it's just kind of getting through the beginning pieces of going. If you think of your life like this comic book, you have to first understand that there is a before version and now there's an after moment where you've changed. And this is like we introduced, like before Bruce had lost his parents, he was just Bruce. After he lost his parents, he became something else. Right? Like if he never lost his parents, he would have never became Batman. I mean, maybe
True.
Alfred would have become, I don't know, like the butler. I don't know. I don't know. Like
Right.
maybe he would have became something. I don't know.
I mean, technically, if you look at, if we're just going to mention that for real quick, I mean, you look at different versions of Batman. I mean, technically, his own father in one of the versions actually becomes Batman, but in this case, he's a darker Batman than actually Bruce ever was. And so, like, he actually uses guns, he actually uses everything that Bruce never decides to do. And so, like, changing those events, you know,
Yeah.
what if,
Yeah.
right? You know, good old what if, like, what if this happened?
happened?
No, no, don't start that now. Don't you start that now. We're not jumping ahead now.
But yes,
Um,
you know, it's just that, you know, that origin story just kind of like sets the pace of understanding that, yes, like you said, there's a before version, and then once you recognize that your and I use the quotes here, your radioactive spider bite changed you. Whether, yeah, it's trauma, loss, heartbreak, maybe you lost your home, maybe it's a family member, you lost your job, whatever that thing is. You can fill in the blank, but there's a separation. Harvey Dent wasn't always Two-Face.
True. He was a lawyer. He was a pretty damn
Right.
good lawyer from in the comics. And Mr. Freeze was a actually, I believe it was I don't really know. I know he was a scientist. I just don't know what he did particularly, but I know he was a famous one.
And
from
then,
what
yeah, I mean,
understand.
once Harvey Dent became Two-Face, he was vicious. Like
Oh yeah. So when he flips a coin and they're both heads, it's like, well, either you get, you know, you get spared or you
Yeah.
basically get killed. I mean, that's just your options.
So
there.
we're gonna break this down. I love metaphors. I'm always like kind of the king of. When I was a counselor at
Oh, here we
Manchester
go.
Metro,
When I was
I always use metaphors because I think it helps paint a better picture, and I think it just when you can see the metaphor and it's explained, I think it just works better. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
So
I do.
when you look at a mutation, it's a natural change. Like it's you know, most of the time, like especially when you look at Deadpool, right? It's
yeah.
a response to like pressure or pain. If you think X-Men, like Deadpool or Wolverine or anything,
whoever.
they evolved. That's a mutation. A malfunction, it's a breakdown. It's something that no longer works as it should. Much like this computer a couple days ago. It
Don't get started on
it,
that.
it no longer worked as it should. That's why I upgraded it. But it was a malfunction. It wasn't a mutation. It malfunctioned. And yes, I had to upgrade the hard drive. Not that it was malfunctioning, but it was slow. So, but once I put the new hard drive in, then it malfunctioned, and I had to
Yeah.
I had to work on a solution. But not the point. But there was a malfunction. It was a breakdown. It no longer worked as it should. That's what the malfunction is. So when life messes with you, you will change. It's completely inevitable. It happens to every single human being. But the direction of the change is not inevitable. It's if somebody grew up in abuse, they might decide, I'll never make someone feel how I felt. That's a mutation. However, somebody else might say, everyone's out for themselves, so I'm going to hurt others before I get hurt. That's a malfunction. So that's where we have these two differences. And you can almost see this with comic book characters, right? When you have these characters who are protectors and they go, I'm going to be, say, Batman, and I'm going to make sure that justice is served and nobody is going to hurt anybody like they, or, you know, like they did with my parents. Even though I don't know if he outright says that all the time, but
No, probably not.
but I think in his own mind, he's like kind of remembers and always kind of sees that picture of his parents getting shot and mugged, and that is why he does what he does to prevent something like that happening to others. And so it's like, I'm going to make sure that other people, innocent people, do not feel that same way that I felt as a little kid, knowing that my parents are now dead.
Because there was nobody there to help
Right.
him in that case. And no, and I agree. And I mean, when you're looking at, like I mentioned, that little fork on the road, right? And like something happens like this. So when you were just talking about, somebody growing up in abuse, letting that, that pain either like trigger you to want to continue that same path of like, yeah, I'm going to hurt everybody else, or hey, I'm going to break the cycle and I'm just going to say, no, I'm not going to continue down this road, is necessary. But, and unfortunately, I hate saying it, but it's true, because sometimes, and I'll say it too, is the other thing about the mutation or even the malfunction is like, let's say you grew up, let's say a pretty normal life, and something happens to you in that sense. And let's say, let's say you start abusing, or you start doing things that is not a normal, let's say, way of doing things that you normally have done. That just happens because, that like that malfunction could have been there. You may not have realized it, and it just took over.
Right.
And it just kind of was there. And unfortunately, like, if you're, it's almost like and I'm going to say it like this, like AA style, but like, recognizing the problem, or like, recognizing that like the first thing is recognizing that you have an issue or having that problem. So like, if you're recognizing that issue in the beginning, it helps you to realize, okay, how do I go back, or how do I revert back to where I need to be, versus like you're doing this for multiple years, and then now it's continuous, and then you're like, well, shit, now is this now a part of me? And now how do I get, do I want to go back, or do I want to continue this? And so it's breaking that cycle, and it's a bitch. It's not an easy fix. It's not something that you can change overnight either. And I think people sometimes think that, especially I'm going to say the generation, because I know that's what we always say is, everything's now, everything, give me now. Like it needs to happen now. Well, unfortunately, guess what? Life doesn't just magically wave its wand and say, here you go.
No,
it's going to happen
It doesn't
right
happen
now.
And I've heard this before, and I think you know who has said this, but I've heard this said many, 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 many times, and where I think on some part it could be true, but I think for the most part it's not. But the saying that I've heard over and over again is that hurt people, and I know who said that, because I've heard it on Sundays in a particular place.
Oh, you mean somewhere where we used to
Yes.
go? Okay, then yes, I do
mention
know.
the names, but you know
That's
who I'm
fine.
talking about.
Now I do.
But I think on some level that could be true. I think on other levels, that's not always the case. And I think in the context of how it was said, I think the context was that hurt people just plain out hurt people. And I don't think that's 100% the case. I think, yes, I think if you are hurt, it's easier that way.
What's the easy way
I
out?
think it is the easier way out, and I think if you are hurt or are hurting, it's easier for you to lash out and just say, you know what, I'm hurting, and I'm just gonna make everybody hurt around me, because it's easier than just dealing with it, and instead of letting it break me and owning up to what I need to address it, I'm just going to make sure everybody feels what I feel.
Well, right. And, when I don't know why it just randomly popped in my head, but like, I'm thinking of an example of, I'm thinking more of a celebrity type here, but like, growing up as an abusive, family, thinking more Chris Brown, right? Because Chris Brown, back in the day, yes, and I know the whole story behind that with Rihanna and stuff, but I'm not going to go dive deep into it. But, the point is like he was in a abusive home, and then he turns out and he hits Rihanna. Like, I don't know. Again, all stories, all tabloids, all whatever. But like taking an example like that, where like you said, hurt people. Um, yes, sometimes it does seem like that, and then there are times where you know it could be triggering. It could be a lot of things that cause that event to happen, and it's not always. I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm saying is that it just it whatever in that person is, it just comes out, and it's not, like you said, it's not always the hopefully that defining moment, right? Because people
Right.
will either change in that moment or again continue to do what they're
Yeah,
doing.
like I said,
And
I don't think it's like 100% of the case, because I mean there are a lot of, I mean, there are some people that have grown up in abusive homes that never hurt other people. So I mean
right.
it's not everybody that's like, well, you're just saying everybody hurts everybody if they're hurting. No, I don't think that that's ever 100% of the case, because
No, it's never going to be 100% the case.
everybody is 100% unique, and that's what makes this like not a 100% sure thing all the time.
Right. And then kind of going back to the comics, I mean, like, I always joke around with like, I always mentioned this with Matt a while back, but like how DC and Marvel back in the day were like stealing each other's like characters, in the sense of like, okay, well, Hawkeye is similar to Green Arrow, and Quicksilver is, similar to the Flash, and then, like, go back and forth with that. But in this case, yes, they are unique in their own rights. They might have similar, let's say, experiences or abilities in this case, but they're unique in their own way because they have a different origin story, or they have a different background, or they're wherever they come from, whatever makes them unique as an individual. You know, not everyone has to live the same. And this goes back to therapy and kind of like the empathy, kind of thing where, you might have similar experiences. You might have similar things that draw you to this one particular person that you're like, yep, I understand. But in some ways you don't understand because you've never lived what they're doing in their shoes, right? Like, you had your own way of doing things. This person has a whole different slew of ways of doing things that are probably not even close to being the
No.
same as you. But the experiences may feel the same, but they are unique because of that individual. And that's kind of the point I think we're also trying to make here
Yeah.
too.
I mean, the angle that we're trying to make here is that some people do heal into wisdom, where others rot into bitterness. So it's the same path, same pain, but different path, right? It's
Correct.
you're dealing with with a similar pain, but people go different paths because everybody's unique. So yeah, some people do heal, other people just stay in their rot.
Continue the
They just
cycle.
continue that cycle. And what we're saying is, if we're being real, and I hope we're being real,
Oh boy, here we
um,
go.
and I'll be one to be serious, just 100% honest.
Okay, here
I
we go.
fucking love villains. I think villains are compelling.
My favorite villain of all time is Joker. I think he's
When
one of the
I
most interesting
when
villains.
I watch a movie, I often hope the villain wins.
Well, and that's why, and I'm going to say it, and this is why, ready? See, this is why I have a beautiful poster over here of the Avengers Endgame. You know, if you remember, well, both. The reason why Infinity War and Endgame worked so well is that Infinity War showed that heroes can
Right.
fail. And that was the compelling piece, because right in the beginning of Endgame, you actually see them pick up where they left off 5 years later, after the aftermath of what
Right.
happened. So that is why like those two movies really work well together, because it shows the realness of how heroes can also fail and also realize that it's real life. Like it can happen, and we're not perfect. And that's the other thing, is we're not, meant to be perfect. That's why, I'm not going to be mentioning religion here, but that's why when whatever you believe in, but I'm just going to mention God here for a second. Okay. You know, in the words of that is like, he made us to be different and unique in our own ways, because he realized that, as humans, we will fail. We will make mistakes. We
Right.
will do that. Like I said, whatever religion you believe in, you go for it. I only mention that because that is just things of
Yeah,
what I
but I mean,
said.
like we're saying, villains are very, very compelling. I think for the most part, yes, we want to follow the heroes, we want to see the great endings, but they're the most interesting part of the story. They're powerful, they're fearless, they don't take crap from anybody. In real life, when you've been hurt or betrayed, being the villain can feel good. You feel like you're in control. You can shut people out. You can become sarcastic, cold, distant. You can push people away, and you can do that before they can hurt you again. Right? Like you
So
can you can
yeah,
become the person everybody hates, and you can just sit back and love it.
right. And so I'm going to mention, like I said, we're just kind of mentioning here, like, so Thanos, prime example of why he's a great villain is because when he gets the Infinity Gauntlet, when he gets the stones and he's finally putting those pieces together, like he realizes it's a hardship because he knows the journey is the hardest part. Once he gets it, I mean, he snaps and he realizes his mission was, basically to erase half of humanity. And because as the world, he thinks that that's going to save, basically the universe in the sense of like, yep, okay, we're gonna get rid of half, and then we're just gonna say, okay, cool, and then basically, what does he do? He's done, and he basically retires in his own little house, and he's done, right? Because he's like, I've done my mission. I'm done what I needed to complete. That's great. Now, when you look at the flip side here, and I'm gonna throw, like I said, Joker. Joker is a very unpredictable villain. Like you never know what is truly going on
Yeah.
in his mind, and you don't understand where he's coming from sometimes. But basically, he has this weird obsession with Batman this entire time. So from the beginning up until even like when you see him in like Batman Beyond, and he's an old man Joker or whatever, you know. You see him, and again, he has this obsession because he says, even to Batman multiple times, he's like, "Without me, you wouldn't be who you are." As like the superhero villain thing because he knows that he has that weird relationship with him. Now I'm not saying that yes everybody has to have that weird thing, but when you look at those kind of two individuals, every villain they think that they're just doing what has to be done, right? And but you've already built your identity around pain, and you're no longer in charge of your evolution. You know, so again, that's why I think of Thanos. Like he's like, I'm
Yeah.
done. Whatever. And he calls it a day. Joker, on the other hand, is actually the opposite. He's like, I'm trying to evolve in some ways, but his own sadistic way of doing things, like that is his weird evolution. Like it's almost like he kind of gets with the times in some ways, and he starts to realize like, how can I get Batman, like the Killing Joke. I mean that whole comic series and even the movie, it's fucked up. But I mean, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically it's he shoots Barbara Gordon, basically disables her, and she goes into a wheelchair, which she then becomes the Oracle. But she was originally um, she did actually, I think she was Batgirl for a little bit before she did that. But anyways, the point is like that's just one segment there, but like that's the piece of like that realism and that weird sense of like you don't like you do find it easier to be hateful and to be this way because like we said, I'm not saying it's the coward's way out. It's just sometimes when you're hurting people, you're just like, well, I guess I just might as well continue it.
Yeah,
Might
I
as
mean
well take
the
that
the
hate.
problem. I mean there's one. I mean there's a few problems with it. One, I mean that armor that you're wearing when you become that villain, it literally corrodes you from the inside. And yes, it might look cool on the outside because you're like, yeah, I mean everybody's hating me, like, but I'm feeling powerful and whatever. But you're really just isolating yourself. You're
Right.
living on your own island. It's lonely, right? Like you're shutting people out. You're if you are becoming like cold and sarcastic and distant, you're pushing people away. You're gonna be by yourself on an island, and everyone's gonna be like, "Yeah, fuck that guy. Like that guy's an
Yeah.
asshole."
Right. Because who wants to be around you? And then sometimes, and this is why I joke with Matt too. Like I know he always says that he can live on an island
Oh,
by himself and
I
doesn't give a shit
100%
about
could.
people. I know, but at the same time, when you look at humans as a whole, right? We do in some ways, not saying everybody, but I do feel like there is some ways because right now, first of all, Matt wouldn't be talking to me if he was really truly going to be living by himself on an island. But that
You
social
just give me
piece.
a Wi-Fi router, I'll be fine.
If you just make sure that I have Wi-Fi and I can watch Netflix for days, I don't give a shit what I do. No, but like in some ways, right? As humans, we do crave some social interactions. And I know Matt's like, I could give two shits about other things. I'm like, yeah, well, then how are we doing this podcast right now? How are we able to do this right now if that was the case?
Just
I'm
give me a
just saying.
mic and and
Give me a mic
computer,
and a setup and
Yeah.
we're good. No, but either way, right? So in some ways, Matt can say whatever he wants. That's fine. That's his opinion. But I'm just saying that you do need to have some sort of social interactions where I mean, and granted, and it sucks where if you're thinking of the villain,
like it says at the top,
here.
it's tempting. Villain mode is tempting, but in the quote of one of my favorite side Star Wars characters, it's a trap.
Yeah, I know I know exactly
it's,
which one.
it's a trap. I mean, being a villain, yes, it looks like it's very compelling and it's very easy to do, right? Like I could walk around and believe it or not, John, believe it or not, it's
Believe it or
very,
not.
very easy for me. Although I do fear confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be more passive aggressive for me, but would be very easy for me to walk around like an asshole
Yeah, I could see that.
and to be like a villain. Like if I was going into work and there were people like around me when I was walking in the door, I would not bother holding the door. I would just open it for myself, and I would do the asshole move and just open it so that I could just sneak through and just let it close behind me. And in my mind, I'd be like, no, fuck you. You can open the door yourself. And that would just be like the complete villain move, because like I'm just like, no, fuck you. You have two hands. Open the fucking door yourself. That's a salty tip, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
But this is villain mode, right? Like I don't care about anybody else but myself. I'm just gonna sit there and do my work. Don't bother fucking asking me for questions, right? Like this is what we're talking about. Like, it's completely compelling. It's easier to do than to be like nice and to be like, yeah, hey, what do you want? As opposed to me turning around and going, can you just leave me the fuck alone? Right.
Can you just shut the hell up and leave it
But that's
alone?
the thing. Like, revenge won't fix you. It'll just teach you how to bleed on people who didn't cut you.
It's a good quote.
It's a good
it's
good
nice.
AI quote. I mean,
The fact it's a good AI quote.
I wish I could take credit for some of
credit
these, but it's a trap. It's
a trap. General Akbar. Anyway,
But it can feel good. It feels like you have control. But at the end of the day, you have to like think about the people that are around you, and you have to understand if I'm doing that, and there's people around me, and they're the door is literally closing in their face. They're probably going, "What a fucking asshole!"
that motherfucker.
Like, it's you have to really just think about yourself and look around and be like, am I really just being an asshole, or am I just being a
asshole.
villain? Like,
Oh, okay.
because there's being a villain, and then there's just like we're talking real life versus comic book. You're not a fucking villain, okay? We're saying villain because we're making it, comic book because we're geeks from the multiverse here. But
Okay.
being an asshole is not compelling, okay?
Okay.
And
I
I
think
can make a
you're
joke, yes, I'm grumpy beard, but like I do not walk around like acting like an asshole. Even though, yes, I could very easily do that.
Okay, hold on a second. You have a I wouldn't say resting bitch face
Oh, I do.
sometimes, but
Oh,
I
I
know
do.
you do. But that's the part that I think people
I very
see.
much do. And I
know.
could very well come off sometimes as rude, but like I don't come off like when I'm interacting with other people or I'm at work or I'm doing other things, like I am not a villain or an asshole. But let's be honest. If you swap out the word villain in what we're saying as just being an asshole. Assholes are not compelling. They're not going to. Thanos was an asshole. I mean,
No, he was an asshole.
he was a villain in the story because he was in a comic book. But if you took that context and put him in the middle of the mall in New Hampshire, right, and you strapped a nuclear bomb to his chest, would he still be a compelling villain?
I guess it depends on which way you look at it.
If you were watching the news and they said there was a man in the mall in New Hampshire with a nuclear bomb strapped to his chest, would you be like, hey, that guy's really cool. He's fearless. He's powerful. He doesn't take crap from anybody.
I'd be like, fuck, we need to get out of here.
Exactly.
No, I know, but
you would not feel good about Thanos being a guy in the mall in New Hampshire with a bomb strapped to his chest. I'm just saying.
No, I'm
just saying. Like that would be I mean, obviously that's an extreme.
Right, a very extreme case.
It's a very extreme case, but you're talking about a character in a comic book who was wiping out 50% of the entire planet's population, not just like the United States, the entire planet's population. And where I can joke and be like, I think Thanos was right, because I do think Thanos was right. He could have maybe aimed it a little bit better. You know,
probably.
I mean,
like who was worthy versus
I
not.
think there were probably more undesirables that probably could have been calculated with his snap. But you know, anyways, that's neither here nor
Either way.
here or there.
Those are the nitty gritty details that we don't
but-
talk about. But
The villain arc is just really that excuse, because if you're looking at that mutation versus malfunction, you're thinking like, oh, this being a villain is just real cool and it feels like I have really good control. You're broken.
I think that's a great way.
Plain and simple.
No, and I honestly, I think, you know, moving to the next segment, I mean, you know, I'm just going to say the quick title. So your power is in the pause. And the only reason why I'm saying this is because I think from all of everything that we've said, I think this is probably going to be the most powerful piece.
And I think
in my
I
personal opinion.
touched on it a little tiny
Yeah,
tiny bit.
A little tiny bit. But no, but it's true. Like your power is in the pause. And I'll explain
But
why.
I have hands.
Okay. Well, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, do you have
I-
hands? I have
I
feet.
don't have
I mean,
paws.
you know. Really? You're talking about an animal now? Is that what we're saying? Are you a dog?
Oh,
Are
you're
you a
talking
cat?
like
pause. Like pause, you know,
playing,
pausing.
like play or pause. Oh, I get it. Oh,
Yeah. See, now I understand his weird fucking humor all of a sudden. Anyways, I'm like, pause. I'm like, what are you talking about? Anyways, so yes, transformation doesn't happen in chaos. It happens in the pause, the moment you take before you react. So this is where I always think of, you want to talk about metaphors? Here we go. I always think of like a little kid, okay? You know, I always think of a little kid when they're, you know, let's say they're, you know what? I got it right here. So I always think of my son, for example, but I also just think of any little kid, you know, when they're trying, let's say the playground, right? And they're trying to like, you know, walk the, you know, the little bridges or whatever, trying to climb up, and then they want to go down a slide, right? And they're sitting there and they're like, do I want to go down? Or do I want to just maybe explore some more or go do other things? So taking that moment for a second, I only say this because I look at my son and I saw him one time, like he went down the slide, but he went way too fast. He was like, no, and he like flies off and it just like he hits his head. And I'm thinking, yeah, he'll be fine. And then, you know, sometimes I'm like, okay, he went a little fast and like, okay, is he going to cry? You know, whatever. But I always think of that just like a little kid pausing. And then I always think of like, you know, my dad telling me, you know, think before you speak, right? I mean, that's just a general thing. I think most parents do that. With like, think before you react to something. Think before you're going to say, because whatever, it's just like social media. Because whatever you put on there, that's a lasting impression, right? So like, you know, like a job interview, like that's your first impression. So that's technically last impression too, because whether or not you're going to be getting a job or not. But I'm going to be moving forward here. But your power isn't how you respond to pain. It's how intentional you are with your next step. So that's where you stop and ask, am I evolving right now? Or am I spiraling? Is this growth or just a way of hiding hurt with anger or silence? So it's true. When you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, like, is this the right thing to do? Or or am I going down a path that I think is not going to be the best results or whatever, right? So, like, when respond to, like, I'm just going to say some of my trauma real quick, like, deployment stuff. Like, there were times that it was hard. Like, I didn't know what to do or say, and I'm not saying I froze, but I had to react quickly because there was no waiting. Sometimes in moments of you know what we think is you're going to have all this time in the world. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to make a quick decision, and sometimes it's not always the best answer, right? And that's where sometimes, if you're given the opportunity because you have so much time, take it. Because sometimes those split second things that you want and you're like, shit, I wish I never would have done that. It sucks. But then that's how you learn from it and try not to make that same mistake or that same, path that you're trying to avoid going on. So go ahead, because I already know you're
Well,
going to
no,
say
I
something.
mean, this is one of those things like when you're talking about, taking a pause. Now I can't get that fucking word pause and pause. Pause and
There
pause,
you go.
pause and
Pause.
pause and pause and pause. Anyways,
Get that out of the way.
get the
Damn it,
hell out
mate,
of
you're
here.
killing me.
Anyways, when I think of this idea, um, I can't help but not think about some of the things that I tell Danielle all the time, which is my wife,
Oh.
but like,
Yes.
um,
Okay.
because it's one of these ideas of like when we're talking about reacting or not reacting or how fast you respond or how slow you respond or you know one of these things like and yes I was a counselor. This is something I used to tell people all the time, and it's not one of those things like you can just do. I've somehow my brain does it automatically for me, and I know it doesn't come naturally to everybody. Maybe my brain just I've set this up and it just automatically things go into different compartments. I don't know. Maybe that's how my brain always was, John. I don't know.
And
But
maybe I don't know. We're not going down that
but
hole.
I always used to like tell people when I was counseling, like you have to learn and teach your brain how to compartmentalize. And this is like you have to, even if you have to like do a journal or brainstorm. I don't know. Get pieces of paper, get a notebook, do something. But like start writing down and make lists and make lists like you make little compartments in your head of like these are things I can control right now, and you just brain dump. I can control everything on this list right now, whether it's like I can pay this bill, I can do groceries, you just make this fucking list. Boom, 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 boom. These are all the things that I have control over right now in my life. You make another list. These are things that I could maybe control within the next maybe week or 1 to 3 months from now. I could maybe control them. Like I can pay this bill within the next month or two. I could do this. I can do that. You just make a list. And then you make a next list. These are things 100% completely out of your control. 100%. These are things that no matter what you could do, you have no control over. And you just keep these lists going all the time. As soon as something comes in, you just add them to one of these three lists. And if you're like, yeah, I can probably not do anything about it. Like if you have a car repair and it's like $13,000, can't do nothing about that shit.
I'm going that off,
So
off to the left
that's
there.
going all the way over to this list. And then, maybe you have a bill that comes in because you were in the hospital and your ambulance bill is $5,000. Well, I'm going to put this on this list that I can't do anything about right now because I don't have $5,000.
Right.
But maybe you're like, well, maybe they didn't run my insurance. So let's move it to this middle list. and I will send them my insurance information, and maybe it'll get taken care of. Maybe it'll be a lesser bill. I don't know.
Right, something you can manage.
But that might be something like, but these are things like the stuff on these lists will always move. This very first list, these are things that you can tackle right away. So these things will move off, new things will move on. The middle list, maybe they'll stay on there for months or weeks or, maybe days. But these are lists like that can help you with this moment of pause before you react to things. Because now, instead of everything just going into one big bucket, right? Like pickup sticks. You remember that game, John?
Oh,
Where you drop the sticks and like you're trying to pick up one without all of them like moving.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever played the game, I'm sure you can pick it up somewhere. Josh's Toys. This is a big store.
Probably, yeah.
It's a big fucking mess.
Oh,
you know, it's like trying to play Jenga, but you pick the one right on the bottom, right? Like instead of picking the one that actually will be the loose one, you're just picking the one on the bottom, and the whole fucking thing falls.
Or ready, 52 card
Right.
pickup. It's always a fun one too.
But instead of one big bucket where you're like everything just goes in here, and you're just like, well, maybe I snap at somebody, maybe I don't, but I don't know what I'm picking up, so I'm snapping at somebody today.
Yeah, like, well, that's bad for you.
But like
No, I'm joking.
now you can compartmentalize what's going into each thing. So now, whether you're dealing with pain or you're dealing with trauma, now you can put these things into these different compartments. No matter what you're dealing with, they can go into these
True.
different compartments, and now you have a way to separate them in your head. So now, if like someone, maybe you don't want to forgive somebody who doesn't deserve it, maybe it does go into that list where you can't do anything about it. Maybe you don't want to do anything about it. But maybe one day it moves over to this middle list, and you're like, maybe in a couple months. And then miraculously it moves on to this list, and you're like, you know what? I just need to get fucking over it. And then somehow it miraculously happens, and it's like a weight lifted off of you, and you're like, why didn't I do this fucking months ago? Like, why
Right,
didn't
or
I do
even
this
years
like
ago.
3 years ago? I could have been done with this shit.
And moved on with my life.
But this is, I'll tell you, like most things, like not even with things that I deal with, maybe like emotional. I don't have emotions, but no, I
don't have emotions.
I do. I'm not a sociopath, but
Hold on a second. Let me I'm not a sociopath.
like,
Just kidding.
things emotionally I deal with, like I have these compartments, but like when I'm at work, I have these lists. I don't write them out. I just do it in my head, but like I have these lists. When I'm at home with the podcast, I have these lists. The creative shit that I do, again, I have these compartments. My head would be like a storage unit.
Storage
It
unit.
would be
That's
like a
what Matt's
storage
gonna
facility. It would be like Grumpy Beard's storage. It just.
Yeah, maybe that's a concept you need to come up to with.
But like, it's the thing. Like, that pause gives you that chance to take control of the mutation and to make it mean something good, not to like just deal with the pain. So like, the pain just deals with you. You know what I mean? Like, right? Like,
no, right.
you don't just have to have like everything dump in this big bucket, and you're just like, maybe you pull out a good thing or maybe you pull out a bad thing, but it's kind of like a draw. You're just hoping whatever comes out of the bucket is a good thing, and you're just going, well, looks like I'm fucking somebody up today.
Why do I feel like that's something you think to yourself, like, I guess I'm fucking somebody up today?
But when you're dealing with that trauma, that's exactly what you're dealing. It's kind of like that, like, spin the wheel. Let's see if I'm doing something good or if I'm fucking somebody up. And you just kind of, well, I'm fucking somebody up. That's it. That's what I'm doing.
Say fuck it. That's just what it is. No, and I was gonna say, when you're talking about the list too. I mean, like I said, when you're given an opportunity, like I said before, to do that, take that time, take that moment of clarity. I can say that sometimes, yes, I do. I can say that, yes, I'll think back at certain things and be like, okay, yes, I know I need to do this today. I know I need to get that done. I know blah blah blah. And you have all these lists for work and all these lists for home, and you're starting to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do for dinner tonight? You're starting to like, go through everything and be like, okay, is this something I can do now, or is this something I can do later? But like I mentioned, it's harder when you have those moments that, um, like I mentioned before, those split second decisions that you can try to think about it real quick, but sometimes you just have to give an answer that you may not have
But
any control over, and you
it
have to
is
do it.
much clearer though when you it's much harder when you first start out just trying to make those lists. But like the more that you do it and the more that you understand, I can ignore this list of the things that I can't control. And the longer you make that list, you can just set it aside and go, I don't have to worry about this list. It's out of my mind. And this list right here, I can probably put it aside, but keep it somewhere where I can like refer to it, because within the next like month or couple months, like I'm going to have to move some of these things to this list that I'm doing. But the list
Right.
that you're going to constantly work out of, that's the list that, yes, these things like, what am I having for dinner tonight? That's on the list. But like, you're not going to be dealing with like some bullshit that happened 10 years ago. That's on that list that you have nothing to, like, you cannot fix that. You cannot do
No.
anything about it. So it needs to be on that list of things that you cannot fix. It's on the list. Yes, you can go to
Right.
counseling, you can deal with it. Counseling should be on that middle list. You can go to counseling, maybe counseling appointments are on the list of things that you can do on a daily or on a weekly. But like
Right.
being abused when you were 7 is something you can't fix. And to keep
No.
you know, thinking about it and perseverating on it, and to keep it in your mind all the time, and being, you need to put it on the list and then put it aside and go, there's nothing I can do that's going to change or fix this right now. You
No.
know what I mean?
I know I'm fully agreeing in what you mean. I'm just more talking about the not so much the split second decisions, but like the moments that it's the unexpected. It's the unpredictability of things that we don't sometimes have. You're right, and it's going to be the uncontrollable piece to it.
But
But
that's what I'm saying.
sometimes, but I know, but I'm saying is life does that, and so that's why I'm saying like sometimes you have to make that.
And I
quick decision
understand,
without-
but what I'm saying is when you can compartmentalize, there's going to be more clarity with what you're with your thinking.
no, and like I said, I agreed with you.
That's all I'm saying. Your thoughts are going to be a lot less chaotic when you're not working from one. If you're working from a bucket, yes, I understand, because everything is just in one fucking bucket, and you're literally playing. It's like playing Russian roulette.
You never know what
Are
you're
you
going
going
to
to get a bullet, or are you going to get a blank, empty chamber? You never know what you're going to get, because all of your thoughts, everything that you do every single day, between work, your trauma, your thoughts, your boss, your wife, your spouse, your kids, everything is thrown into this one bucket. And if you haven't sorted it all out, it's just one big chaotic clusterfuck.
There you go. I like that word, clusterfuck.
But
'cause
that's exactly what it is. Your thoughts are going to be one big chaotic clusterfuck. And yes, whenever that thing comes up, and I hate the word triggered, but when you are triggered and you have to make that one thought and that one decision, you're pulling that one revolver out and hoping it's not the one bullet, or it's an empty chamber, right?
Right. No, and that's why. Right.
But
And
when
that's why
you
I'm saying that.
sort it out, right? When you can sort it all out and lay it all out there, you'll have a lot more clarity to make that informed decision, because now you can see, okay, so these are the things that I just can't control. These are the things that, okay, so, and this is what we're saying about the pause. It's taking that pause and understanding, okay, so these are the things, okay, good. So now you don't have to pull that revolver out and
Like,
to
all right,
make
let's
some
do it.
weird like I need to make a decision right this second. No. Just take a breath, sort out those thoughts before you make that decision. Because if you're really that chaotic and you're like, I have to make a decision right now, no, just stop for a minute.
Stop what
Just
you're doing. Pause. Think.
Just yeah.
Decide. There you go. Maybe we should make an acronym for that, huh? Stop, pause, think, react.
Because I mean, this very last segment, like from broken to better, not bitter. So you've been through something that's not up for debate. What happens next? You can carry the scars. You can still smile. Maybe it's a mask. Who knows? You can walk through fire. You still choose joy. Bitterness, of course, is easy, right? It can protect you, but it will keep you stuck in that same loop. I mean, I've being a addiction counselor. I mean, you were at Farnham too, which Farnham's closed now, by the way.
I figured, yeah.
But it keeps you stuck in that same loop, same pain, same trigger, same walls. If you're choosing to grow, choosing to evolve, that's a much harder thing to do. But it's the only way that you can move forward. And we're not saying you have to go from pain and broken to being all the way on the opposite side of that spectrum. No. You just one step in front of the,
No, don't you start with me, because that's a great Christmas film. That's all I'm going to say.
But no, you just, as long as you're making that one step to be better, and then you take another step.
Hold on a second. It's actually 1 foot
Whatever.
in front of the
I
other.
don't
Get it
care.
right, man. Get it right. That's all.
But you know what I'm saying? Like you're choosing to evolve. I mean, evolution, and I'm not one to be like, oh, evolution over and whatever. But you're choosing to evolve, and evolution is not like you becoming like Iron Man overnight. Like, right? It's not you becoming Wolverine overnight. Like, it's not you becoming the hero overnight. You're not getting bitten by a radioactive spider and then all of a sudden climbing walls and defeating Doc Ock the next day. No. It's you taking the next step, becoming a better person, and then taking another step, and then taking another step. There might be a million steps between where you find out your origin story to where you become the person that you think that you want to become. There might be a million. There might be 2 million. Might be 50 million. I don't know. There might be 1,000. I have no idea how many steps there will be.
Right. It just, because again, when you look at the journey, right, and we've talked about this already, it's not just one clear path. There's always those like tiny little paths that you might steer off on, and you might have to, like we've talked about just a second ago, like
Compartmentalizing.
I can't even think.
It's a
There you
hard
go.
word.
There you go. That's that compartmentalizing.
Linoleum.
Aluminum. Anyways, we're going off a track here, but you're doing that because it's necessary to understand. Like, okay, what is the way I want to go on my path? What is trajectory? Like, what is going to guide me to where I need to be? And so, it is the hardest part. And we just talked about it too. As we say, the triggers and the barriers or the walls, the things that cause these obstacles for us in life. We have to realize that, we can make the best decisions every day. We can keep going through life the way we want to, but at the end of the day, you will have to make that decision of, do you want to continue down the road you're going on, or do you want to find a way to, like we said, evolve, to grow, to become whatever it is that you want to become. And I'm going to say whether it is good or bad, because, if you want to be good, then that's great. Then you follow a path and, you find ways that are going to make your life, we're going to say, easier, right? Because I always think sometimes, everyone's like, oh, well, being a good guy is always the hard way. Well, not always. Sometimes it's easier because you're realizing there's things that you can get from it as well. Like you get that social interaction, you get the, you know, those kind gestures. You get all these things from it because you're trying to do good for the better of, let's say, good, right? But then yes, you're right. You can be an asshole too, and you can also be the most hated person around, and you can think whatever, and they fear me, they whatever. Yeah, but guess what? Like we've said before, it gets lonely, it gets isolated. You're by yourself on a little island of just, I guess in Matt's case, full of Wi-Fi and fucking TV and shit. But
Hey.
whatever. But like the point is you're doing it all by yourself. You're not asking for that help. You're saying, hey, I'm macho. I'm gonna be the only one that needs me, and I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do and all this other shit. But guess what? I would say probably one of the hardest things in life is to ask for those kinds of help.
Well, I think it comes
You
to
know?
like when you're choosing that bitterness and to be the villain, it's like no, I'm going to be hard because if I'm just if I'm gonna be a hero, then I'm just gonna be weak, and I don't want to be. I'm not gonna have people breaking me because that's weak and soft. Like I'm not gonna be weak and soft. You know what I mean? And that's
No.
you're not gonna be weak for being a hero. Like it,
Well, I was gonna say Bane when he broke Batman's back, he definitely wasn't. Batman was in excruciating pain in that moment when he broke his back. But at the same time, I mean, granted, he had to recover and get back into that fighting
actually
shape.
was watching just kind of a side topic, but there was a Adult Swim. What the hell is that show?
Was it Toonami or not? No. Always Super Mega for or the French fries and shit, or is it something completely different from
No,
what you're
the
talking about?
action figure thing. What is the
Oh, the from back in the day, right? Like the weird.
what am I?
I'm trying to remember the action figure. I think I know what you're talking about.
Why am I not? Why am I drawing a?
I think once you say it, I'll probably know what it is because I have I don't know if it's actually no. I think that was on Nickelodeon. Never mind. That's what I'm thinking of. Remember? Yeah, I don't even remember what it's called.
Just keep talking.
Okay. No, I think the villain route, for most people, it's people say, well, it's a coward's way out. I mean, I guess in some ways, like sure, you could look at it like that. You could also say it's the easier way out, or you know, the 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 easiest way to just deal with pain. But at the same time, it's like I just said, it's not the most like there's nothing you're gonna get from it besides just basically a lonely, isolated life, and you're basically just gonna go down a path that you know what? If you're the most hated person around, then that's just what it is. And I mean, the people are just going to know you as this giant asshole that nobody wants to be around. And I'm like, yeah, I don't. And also having that negative energy, like I don't want to be around negative fucking people. I don't want to be around negative Nancy's or negative fucking Karens, bitching and moaning about everything. Like, no, I want to be around people that help me, that drive me to be a
got
better
it.
person.
Yeah.
All right, so
Robot
what is
fucking
it?
chicken. I don't know why I couldn't.
Oh, Robot Chicken. I was like,
I
dude,
don't-
what
I
are
don't
we
know why I
talking
couldn't
about?
think of it, but there was a DC episode of Robot Chicken, and what was funny about the episode, and just 'cause this is way off topic, but what was funny about the episode because there was obviously different episodes, but they were all DC based. Was it kept having Bane breaking Batman's back in all the different little episodes, Batman and Bane weren't even in the episodes, but like Batman would just show up, and then Bane would come in and break his back for no reason.
What the hell?
And he was just, oh, son of a bitch.
Okay, that's
And
random.
then he would like come in and like you'd be like in like crutches and like all like bandaged up, and then Bane would come in and break his back again. He'd be like, "Oh, I just came back."
What the hell?
It's just a funny little thing, but yeah, but I do bitterness and this whole idea, it being when you move from that broken to better, not fixed, right? I mean, we're not talking about becoming whole and new and become a better you. It's just becoming a better you. Like you become the hero of your own story, not by pretending nothing happened, because obviously, if you're at this point, something obviously has happened, right? But you're
Right.
deciding yourself what happens next.
Right. So, prime example, right? I know, and this is just me, okay? and we've talked about this a little bit before, but like, you know, I served in the military. I did all that. I got out for my own personal reasons. I did whatever, but I wanted to give back to, veterans and working with them and doing that now. So, working, um, at Greater National Mental Health. I mean, it's nice, and it's being able to give back and being able to, um, to do these things. And so like that's the thing where for me it's like I'm trying to give back to what I know personally, and understanding that, I'm not saying I'm 100% like renewed and everything else, but being able to guide individuals and say, hey, yes, I understand you're struggling. I understand there are obstacles in the way, and there's things in life that you're, struggling with every day and all this stuff, but you know, finding a way to, guide people to be like, hey, you know what? I want you to be this independent individual that can do all these things, and having a source of, you know, I guess really hope. I think really the best way to put it is having that sense of hope for people to want to do that. And so kind of going back to this, when you're in that villain mode or the bitterness mode, like there is no hope. There is no, real, wanting to change, because you always think to yourself, okay, well, there's no what's the hope, or what's my purpose? Like, is there really anything I can do to change this? Like,
Yeah.
and some people don't, like we've said, and some people maybe that is the defining moment of like maybe there is a way to get back the humanity's sake of being good and doing the right thing, but again, and sometimes they just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to do that. I just, as we say, we just die alone, and we don't care about those things that happen in life or whatever.
Yeah. Like
But
that, that quote right at the end there is bitterness is just pain that thinks it's doing something. And I think when you look at Thanos, like I think he thought he was doing something that was like, oh, this is what the world really needs.
right, and he's humanity's savior in the sense of eliminating literally half the population, whether it's on Earth or any part of the universe in this
Right.
case. And he's like, oh, okay. So I did my job. I'm just going to go home now and basically live his days on a farm. Basically, is what
Yeah.
he was doing.
But
Okay.
it's like villains are born when pain is left unchecked. So and heroes are made when pain is turned into purpose. So this is the idea of mutate but don't malfunction, right? It,
Mm,
when your pain is left unchecked, you're going to become a villain. Plain and simple.
right.
When
And
you
that's
can take your pain and then turn it into something, that's when you can become a hero.
well, I'm going to say this, and I know Matt's, he's like, well, whatever. But I will say that again, having social supports or having people on your side when we're talking about the pain left unchecked, you're not having those things that you would have had if you had somebody there to help in some ways, or I wouldn't say help, but I would say, like guide you, right? To guide whatever pain or the whatever it is that you're dealing with, that's what it is. They're just like, ah, fuck it, we're just gonna do it, and we're just gonna fuck everything, right? Heroes, they have people around them. They have their loved ones. They have people that they depend on, or vice versa. So they have people that it gives them that sense of purpose. Villains don't have that sense of purpose. They only, I mean, I guess they do in the sense of like, well, now I want to hurt people, or now I want to do whatever it
Well,
is that I can get rid of
they
this
have
pain.
henchmen.
Well, yeah, well, okay, but I mean, the point is that they have a purpose of
Right.
doing something. It's just not what
They don't
when we
they
look
don't
at
deal with their pain, but they often try to make others feel the same pain.
pain, right? And so I know, and I always think of like Joker here. He's always trying to be the comedian. He's always trying to be the funny guy. But his sense of humor is usually deadly, depending on which way you look at it. But he's always trying to make people laugh, even though he's like, tough crowd, huh? And he starts laughing at himself, and he starts laughing, and everyone's like, stop laughing. And you're like, but that's just what he does. He laughs his pain, and that's all he's doing. And like,
Yeah.
when he does the Joker gas and shit, like that's his way of showing, like, okay, well, we might as well make a smile on their face and make them happy. When it's even not realistic.
Yeah.
When it just doesn't make sense. And then Yeah, you know. So again, really, the moral of the story here is, when you mutate, clearly you're going to get a better outcome from it. When you malfunction, shit's just going to continue down the cycle of the same bullshit you've just been in. So really realizing at least the problem, right? Realizing hopefully in the beginning, if hopefully, you're at a point where, you start to understand what it is that you want to become, right? So whether it's good or bad, you're going to find out. It's just what it is, right? So whether, you've had it, again, we've talked about the abusive home life or not, right? Or, you grow up normal and then you have a lot of trauma as you get older, and then sometimes you're good first and then you become bad or whatever, right? So it doesn't matter what point in your life, right? Whether you started out good and then became bad, or bad and then good, or you've just been good the entire time, or you've been bad this entire time. It doesn't matter. The point is how you deal with said pain and how you want to respond to that pain. And hopefully it's the right decision, whether good or bad.
Yeah, I agree.
He's like, I agree. Now shut that. No, no. But anyways, boys and girls, yes, we're gonna be talking about more. Hopefully next week. I believe it's Hellboy, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. Let me take a quick gander.
But yes, we're gonna be diving more probably just on the superhero. Well, really more the.
We got a couple episodes of superheroes, and then that third week, which is I believe the start of September.
Oh, is that when we're doing the 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
2000s?
We start our 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Yes, we're going to go nostalgia on your butts. Yeah. But anyways.
We'll start that series with a Where Are They Now meme edition. So that
see, where are they now?
That one's going to be fun. I'm telling you that right now. We got a lot of old school memes we're talking about. Like, this is the way.
Oh, God. I know you're going to. I know. Knuckles, man. Ugandan Knuckles. My God. I haven't heard that in a while.
Do you know the way? You just don't know the way.
I'll tell you the way. No, let's not do that right now. Anyways, yes, until next time.